A very warm good evening to all our viewers here. My name is Shashwat. I'm part of the Azim Premji University. I work with the Research Center and the Communication team. And I welcome you all back again to another edition of Nature Writing for Children webinar series. If you have joined us for the first time, I will let you know that this is a series that we have been working on since past couple of years, since the COVID years to be more precise. Through these series, we have these conversations with the authors, editors, and yes, at time publishers, talking about the nuances of the nature writing for children genre, and how can writers write better books. What I would also like to share with you all is, this initiative has grown beyond the webinar series that we have. What started off as a webinar series has transmuted into we started these online courses basically, sorry, online courses, which are 2 days courses, 2 and 3 days courses that we have and we curate, where we have a lot of participants taking them through the process of writing for children. We also have now offline courses. We did one of this wonderful thing in March this year at Pinch Tiger Reserve, and we now have a newsletter for nature writing for children, where on a monthly newsletter where we curate stories, we have book reviews, and my friend and partner in this crime is Megha Gupta, who's an author herself. So these all the idea behind nature writing for children has been to kind of grow this community, and how do we foster these discussions. So this webinar today is part of the same series itself. And as I said, we have these conversations with authors and publishers, but possibly this is the first time that we are having an editor and a publisher both at the same time. We had these individual conversations in the past, but today we are very lucky to have Deepa Agarwal and Vatsala Kaul-Banerjee with us to talk about their new book, the Earth Lovers, Book of Nature, which has been published recently by Hachette, and also to, yes, that's the book that Deepa is holding for you, and also to talk a bit about what goes into writing for children, and what are the challenges and what are the kind of from a genre, how is it developing over the years. So without much ado, I would like to first start off this conversation. Thank you so much, Deepa, and thank you so much Vatsala, for joining us today, and it's great to
Thanks for
have you
having
around.
us.
Yes. Just to start off the conversation, Deepa, I would like to start off with you. Is when we talk about this book, how did this book come together? Because we have these lot of different. It's a sort of compendium. How did the idea come, and how much time it took for you to put this thing together? If you can just take us through the process. Yeah.
Sure. Thanks a lot, first of all, Shashwat, for inviting me. And it's lovely to be here talking about this book. Yes, this is a project, I think it was very close to both Vatsala's and my heart. And, we were just discussing ideas. And since nature and climate change, all these issues are so much in our minds, and we are, experiencing all these problems. So it was, I guess, very natural and spontaneous that this idea should come about. And let me share, I grew up, well, to use a cliche, in the lap of nature in the hills of Uttarakhand. And it really distresses me every time when I go back home and I see, there is so much of a change for the worse. The mountain tops are being cut, and trees and forest fires and landslides and flash floods, cloud bursts. And definitely, my surroundings have changed because what is going on. So I think it was very natural that we should take up this topic. And it took us some time to put it together for various reasons. Of course, the selection of pieces, first of all, and then also because, there are always interruptions. Both of us were busy in different things. Vatsala doing so many books, and I with my other writing. And we definitely were committed to having as wide a selection as possible. So first of all, the idea, okay, a book on nature, and we definitely didn't want to make it a doomsday book. We wanted to celebrate nature, focus on the delights that nature gives us, and human beings' very deep and natural connection with nature. So that was what we decided right in the beginning. And then we also wanted, there should be variety in the sense that different uh, genres of writing, uh, how nature is expressed through poetry or fiction or non-fiction, which can be personal experiences of people, who are already passionate about the natural world. Then so then the selection process started. Okay, but we also wanted classic works as well as contemporary works, because just to show that continuity, that our relationship with nature has always been there. And I must say it was a wonderful experience. That's what I really enjoyed, going back to the works that I had enjoyed as a child, and also discovering new works. And we had a lot of discussion about this, and a lot of back and forth, and piles of books were read. I enjoyed the reading, and there were also discussions about selections of certain pieces, like for example poems. And I didn't want the very uh, well-known poems, something poems like, say, daffodils, Wordsworth's Daffodils, because it has actually become a cliche, trying to search for lesser known works to introduce them to children, and also works that children could, well, I don't like to use the word comprehend, but grasp the idea more, not too complicated works. And I think with Emily Dickinson, Vatsala, we had some problems. So there was a lot of hunting for appropriate writing, and then even the contemporary you know work that's going on, and going through anthologies. And sometimes it was just lucky, like I attended a poetry festival, and then I heard a poem, and I said, and later on I said, yeah, this is going to fit into our anthology. So they were like serendipitous moments like that. And then again, there were tricky moments too, like we had invited pieces also, and then there was at least one piece which just didn't fit in, and then we had to very tactfully ask the writer to give us something different, because so this is what happens in an anthology, putting it all together. So that,
Yeah,
well,
in fact, I was gonna come to that. If Vatsala, with you, what were the challenges? Because there's also this challenge that one would foresee is the copyright issue. There's a lot of these are published different ways, and if you could just take us through this whole process. And was there a selection criteria that you defined? Because nature writing has become a genre now, but it wasn't so till a couple of decades back in that sense. What people were writing stories, but without a real outlook towards writing for nature per se in that sense. So how did you select these pieces, and was there something very specific you were looking for in these selections?
Let me take your last question first. Is whether um, I was looking for pieces that were nature writing within quotes. No, I wasn't. I wanted the book to include pieces. I mean, uh, to deliberately write for nature. I don't know how that is done. Like you start off thinking, okay, I'm going to write about nature, and then you start off from that point. I think that it should be more organic, whatever you're writing. And there have been so many people who have written about nature without thinking that they are writing towards a genre called nature writing. And those writings have been, I don't know if they were spontaneous or not, but they come out as very spontaneous and very deep feeling pieces, whether they're non-fiction or fiction or poems. and I wanted to include any of those. Uh, and I didn't see it from the point of view of whether this is nature writing or not. Okay, and I don't think Deepa also came from that platform, to see something as nature writing or not nature writing, or how many words are there about nature or not about nature. So we did both want to cover a range of topics that, yes, my um, feeling was that, celebrating nature is the first point of valuing it. And of course, there are lots of problems, and we do want to talk about those, but didn't want to make it a disaster book, or a book to address the disasters in nature, because I don't think that works. Like, people keep saying, okay, carbon footprint, this, that, but it's not like there has been a sudden change in or a sudden realization among all human beings that, yeah, okay, 20 years later we may not have water. So I just wanted young readers to feel a closeness with nature, but also have an understanding of its immensity in one way, and also its fragility, in another way, because that is what it is. It is way bigger than you, but you can actually destroy it, with over centuries or over ages or whatever. So both of those things needed to be there: a celebration, also a kind of mourning of what we may have done to it, and the immensity and the fragility. Both, all these aspects I wanted to include. I wanted them included, and we discussed, Deepa and I discussed this. She actually made an Excel sheet, and she's much more organized than I am. Made an Excel sheet, and then we saw that, okay, maybe we have too many pieces on trees, or something else, maybe too much on water. So we did want to balance. The challenge is that it's so nature has so many aspects. You can do, air, water, soil, that kind of thing. Okay, that needs to be there, but also there's weather, there's climate, yes, that needs to be there, but also flower. I mean, there's so many things. There's also ecosystems, there's also animals, there's colors, there's moods, the calamities, so it's hard to put it all in one book. But we tried to take the significant features, or what we thought. I mean, it's books are always interpretations of the people working, on them. So uh, it may be skewed a little bit this way or that, but that's the nature of the beast. So that's how it is. The challenges in terms of copyright, yeah. So of the Indian writers, obviously, it's not so difficult. You can pay for a piece and use it in your anthology in a non-inclusive exclusive way. And I had a lot of pieces in my earlier books, which, some of them haven't been read by many people, because those books may not have, done that well. And I really did want to bring those pieces back to the fore again. So, and some books that have sold well, but are just like a reminder of those, pieces of writing, as well as some out of copyright work that we are lucky to be able to use because it's out of copyright. Sometimes what happens is that when you look for work that is not out of copyright, you have to pay so much to a foreign publisher that sometimes I feel it's not fair to my author to, pay like multifold to for one piece. Um, Maybe because of a name or for some other reason, and not be able to pay my own. So I'd rather divide the money I have for an anthology equally amongst my authors, fairly amongst the people who are writing for it, rather than, give somebody like so much and then the other people don't get paid anyway. In publishing, you don't always get paid enough for um, this kind of work. So yeah, that is, I think, was the main challenge of that. Budgets are always a challenge. If I had an unlimited budget, of obviously I would have a very, the book would have many more beautiful things than it already has.
Yeah. So I now have a common question for both of you. There are so many pieces in the book, such a range from fiction to non-fiction to essays to poems and everything. Uh, I'm sure there must have been a lot, many more that didn't go into this volume. So, could this? Do you think this will be like a series that will come out, one, two, and others? And personally, if I were to ask each of you, which were your favorite pieces that you really, that you just had to include it in this compendium?
That's a tough one for me. Deepa, you go first.
Uh, well, yeah, it is a tough question because there's so many pieces that we loved. Well, I must say I love Rupa Pai's poem. I felt it sort of covers everything, and I'm sure children will love it. The way she has used the alphabet of nature, and the rhymes, and the peppy tone. I felt that was very well done, and of course, I love Vatsala's poem because it is very spontaneous, and it reminds me. It takes me back to the days when I began writing because it was published in Target.
That's
That's
right.
where I began. But also, the Jules one, the extract from Jules one, water, where is it? Because I was a great fan of Jules Verne in my childhood, and I just loved, Journey to the Center of the Earth. So it
Yeah.
really sort of took me
That was an
back.
unusual one. That was an unusual one.
Yeah. Hmm?
That was an unusual one. Like you were not unexpected one.
Yes, actually, it was an unexpected one, and I was reading and reading, and I say, which chapter? And then I said, no, yes, it has to be this one. And it was just amazing that you make these rediscoveries. I mean, I
Yeah.
read
So
several of them
for
in my
me,
childhood, I read these books, but well, it was great to have this discovery. Yeah,
Yes,
please go
Vatsala.
ahead.
for me, I deeply, deeply, deeply admire people who work in nature, with animals, with wildlife. I mean, I just respect them so much because it's a passion. It's usually very NGO type of work. You know what I mean? It's not. I mean, I know some filmmakers and all, they're paid well, but generally the people that I have worked with, whatever money they're making is a separate matter. But the passion for what they're doing just overwhelms everything else, so uh, some of the pieces that are there, like I wanted them to be there, like there's an essay that Vivek Menon wrote in an earlier book of mine, and I just loved it because it answers questions that that kids have asked me, and things like, okay, so what if there are no tigers? Like, what would happen? Okay, we are going on about saving tigers. So, like, I had posed this question to Vivek, and also the whole thing about the glamorous and the unglamorous animals, like we're focusing on these five, six so-called glamorous animals. But what about all the others? Like, I love reptiles and insects, and people think that's really strange, but they are so much part of that whole chain of biodiversity, and they're equally important, if not more. And so I love Vivek's piece. I love Manish Chandi's piece because I just like, where he lives, what he does to be in a boat in the middle of a storm. I mean, like, what could be more nature? And eating bats. I mean, it just like sounds a bit like sensational, but actually no, for him it isn't. It's his life, and that is what is so amazing about it. And Ajit Bajaj, whom I've known since I was we were in our 20s, and I haven't met him since we've been in our 20s, but I've followed his adventures across ice caps or rafting or mountaineering, and I'm like, this is what, how do you get this across to city kids and to people like me? Actually, I mean, what I was, I've if Deepa has grown up in the lap of nature, I've grown up in a shroud of pollution. So, but the love of for nature and its beauty, its fearsome aspect, its nurturing aspect, so all that comes so well through these pieces written by people who have uh, been there, done that, and they bring the real truth to you. Not to say that people who have imagined things, or even, like Ranjit, I love his details and his imagination that he brings to. So, like, there's so many. And I love Beena's poem, I love Meera's poems, and I'm a great fan of poetry, and that gets published so little. So you may have a book of favorite poems for kids, but new poetry for kids hardly gets published, and I did want to include that. Um, so I'll ask another question you may want to be asking later, is that, why is there a mix of fiction and non-fiction and poems? Because we wanted uh, the readers to go from one piece to another without thinking this is, oh, okay, I'm reading a story, or I'm reading an essay, or I'm reading a poem, but just go with the flow and jump from one stream to a beach to a forest to a tree to a shell. I just wanted that experience of, because you can predict nature in that sense. You go to for any walk and you'll see 10 aspects of it or 200 aspects of it. So I wanted that sort of feel, like a freewheeling um, journey, or walk into nature.
So I must confess, the book, it surprises you in many ways, because there's no fixed format to it, because of, yeah, while there's a sequence and there's a methodology that you pursue, but the pieces, like as you mentioned, Vivek's piece, The Truth About Nature, is such in stark contrast to Ranjit Lal's piece on Magpie Robin, the Mad Mozart that is there. So these kind of things, it's a flavor for all the seasons. And what I also felt good about the fact was, we have been over the past few years, meticulously getting all the authors into our nature writing for children, from Zai to Beecher to everywhere, and they all were there in this compendium. So I was like, okay, this is kind of the who's who of that, in that sense. uh, but before we get into the other aspects, Deepa mentioned this, but like, what about your poem, The Green Seal? If you can tell us about that inclusion of that poem, and how did your mom
Actually,
feel about how when you made her a sort of a villain in that piece?
actually, I did write a lot of. I did write some stuff about nature at Target, which was my second and best. I mean, beautiful job. I had a great time at Target. Um, so it must have been June, and it must have been World Environment Day, and we were writing something or the other. And I used to write a lot of humorous verse at that point of time. And I wrote this, and I can't remember whether it was 89 or 90, something like that. And I'd kind of forgotten about it. And just when I was doing the book and Damini was doing the cover, she sent me a WhatsApp message saying, "Hey, I went home, and do you know my mother? I mentioned you to my mother, and my mother used to write for Target and draw for Target, and Damni sent me a few uh, pictures of some pages from an old Target that her mother had, and one of them was this." And I was like, okay, this is a sign. I have never put my writing into any of my books, but this one, I think I want to put it in there. My mother, she's actually a very very animal loving person, nature loving person. So I just put her there as a villain, just like that. I don't think she was such a villain, though she still has a problem with my untidiness and not so much my face, but in the way I keep things and my clothes and stuff. So it's okay. I think she deserved it.
Yes, and Deepa, you also included a poem, Amaltas, in that thing. So, if you can also take, you have been writing extensively for children for all these years. As you said, coming from Almora to you have been including things about the hills and the mountains in almost all your works in certain ways. Be it the folk tales or the other mythology stories. So first, of course, the poem that you added in the compendium, what was the reasoning behind it? And also, if you can just take us some of your work and how nature has played a very important part in your writings.
Okay, I want to just interrupt even before she starts. Is that
Yes.
I've known Deepa since Target days when I was in my very early 20s, and she had a very long braid, that, a long plait, and over the years it's kind of grown shorter and shorter and shorter in reverse.
Yeah.
Thanks for reminding me.
That's what
Yeah.
how I remember her, with this long plait.
I remember,
Okay.
yes, I did it in stages because getting rid of a long, long plait in one go is too startling for people. Anyway,
Pruning is a good thing in nature, they say. Pruning.
Yeah. Pruning, yeah.
well,
Yeah.
my poem Amaltash, uh, this is a house I used to live in many years back. There was an avenue of amaltash trees, and I just love the flowers of summer and the flowers of the different seasons. And there's this beautiful avenue on both sides. The amaltash would bloom in summer, and this poem came to me very spontaneously, literally, like walking there in the with the loo blowing and stuff like that. So I had written this poem. I had sent it to a magazine in the US where I was contributing occasionally, and it was published. And subsequently, it's been there. Somebody picked it up for a textbook also. And when we were putting this anthology together, I mean, I write poetry, but I write very little poetry for children, oddly enough. People always ask me, why is that? But that's the way, my mind works where poetry is concerned. So it just struck me, like Vatsala said, I also don't like to put in my own work into an anthology I'm compiling. But the temptation was irresistible. And anyway, I'm glad I was able to feature it, because this is something about the wonders of nature. In the midst of summer, you can't imagine that any plant can survive, but then you have the amaltash blooming so gloriously, as I put it. So yeah,
Yes, and Deepa, your nature in your works, if you were to just kind of take us through, uh, what role nature has played in all your books. Yeah.
well, see, especially my early short stories and my early books, I think it was very natural that nature should come in. A lot of my stories, because they were inspired by childhood experience, and some of my stories which were published in Target also. And so when you're putting in the background, nature has to come in. The hills and the forests and the birds and the wild berries, and all the things that we did in our childhood. So in that sense, nature has always played an important, it's of the background is always there. In some of my books, I've located them in places that I've loved. Like Binsar is a popular destination, and one of my early books is set in Windsor, and those memories of the whistling thrush, early in the morning. It's still, when I go home, that is something that we really look forward to, listening to the song of the whistling thrush. So That way, nature is almost like I feel another character in my stories. And of course, a lot of my books are set in the city also. But that is something that I cannot, that will cannot be disassociated with my writing. And you mentioned my folk tales, and the folk tales of Uttarakhand, because the, uh, the uh, topography, or the wild birds and animals and all these things will come. There are so many bird stories of transformation, and also some of them are very sad stories, almost like Greek myths. But nature is always there, that how something tragic occurs and the person is transformed into a bird. And I think that is kind of, I look at it as nature as a liberating force that is taking you away from your the problems in your life, or just the wonder of taking a walk and you see this a pretty flower blooming by the roadside. Or so that way, and I really enjoy writing all those descriptions. And here I must also mention the inspiration. There was a very famous Hindi writer from my hometown, Shivani, who was extremely popular. And definitely, I feel that her writing made me conscious of all the things, the surroundings, which one takes for granted. That's what happens. That when you're living in a particular place, you take your surroundings for granted. But when you go away, and then you realize that, yeah, you're missing those lovely scenes. You're missing the sun going down behind the hills, or as I would like to, the birds just swooping among the trees, or the sighing of the wind, whatever. And I think then you think more deeply about it, and you don't take it for granted, because it's something precious that you don't have access to in the city. So that's why I really enjoy this aspect of writing, that I can relive all those experiences.
But yes, Deepa, and that's a very brilliant point, because possibly in your writings, nature is a character, as you said, because it has been there and you've grown up. But today, with an India that's almost 50% urban, in that sense, kids are growing into all these cities that we have today. Uh, there seems to be a large disconnect with nature per se. It's in silos, it's in our forest national sanctuaries, or these parks that we have. What is the value of now in this current thing, nature writing per se as a genre? And this is a question to Vatsala, you as well. And how do you think we can craft books which can help children to connect with a thing that they can't really can't really feel it, touch and feel it that readily nowadays? That's kind of a.
Shashwat, in especially in anthologies that I've done earlier or now, whether it's just stories for a particular age group or an age band, or done an anthology of stories for young children, for older children, for nature, for um, there's a book of truths I did earlier on as well. So, publishing, and there have been, books that one does of, modern classics, and one does them because that they are niche books that they may not sell much, but you are also playing a role in archiving writing, archiving experiences, archiving uh, specific authors who may have written about a particular aspect of actually anything, but okay, let's say here nature. Uh, one of our, I mean, I see it as part of my job to do that, to archive good writing about any aspect, any topic. But here I would say that I did want to archive um, certain experiences that I thought were valuable for younger people to read. And let me here answer your question that you had earlier touched upon. Like, who is this young reader? Okay, so
Yeah.
in India, uh, it's a very heterogeneous reading population of children. So in some inner city, maybe a 10-year-old would be reading the same thing that a 14 or 15-year-old would be reading somewhere else. Um, so that's why I said young, and I did not say children, because when you say children, then some young people who think they're not children don't want to read it. The children is way better in SEO, like, so if you but I didn't want to do that. I just wanted it to be a book for anyone. There are pieces there that a 9-year-old can read, there are pieces there that a 14, 15-year-old can read, and there are pieces there that 40-year-old, 50-year-old, they're evergreen pieces. So there's one we
Yeah.
have. So yeah, so what kind of writing should we have? I think writing, I mean, good writing is always one that comes from the heart, that is not, that even if it is has a message, has uh, a way of telling, communicating the message, which is engaging and true. Because I think it's very easy to make out fake writing which has not been well researched or well felt. And that kind of writing, which is superficial, which doesn't come from a deep understanding of an aspect of nature or of nature in its entirety, uh, is very easy to see. That okay, this is not working because there's this message, which anyway the kids have been told over and over and over again. It's like a slogan. But writing about nature which connects it to humans, because we are the people, kind of in control of everything right now that we are doing to the earth. Though I mean, we are in control of, yeah, uncontrollable control of what we are doing. But I'm just saying that okay, we are not always managing to control it. But what I mean is that we are the dominant species that is doing things to not only other species but ourselves. So, writing that connects to the people that it's trying to communicate to. I mean, it all sounds a little, like, stereotypical what I'm saying, but it is true that the writing has to be textured, that it has to be felt, if not experienced. I mean, everybody can't go and live in a forest, but you can
True.
imagine or create writing that completely feels and a variety. Like, let's not write about the same things over and over and over again. Let's write about uh, corners and nooks of nature that are not, maybe not that buzzy, but need to be explored. And let's always give the it's very difficult to give messages about nature sometimes, because there's always this tussle between what is natural and what is developed, and we need both. But let's strike a balance as far as possible, or at least make readers understand why it's happening and what is happening. I think we can't do the decision making for them, and they can't do much decision making exactly at this point in terms of policy. But whatever seeds we are leaving in their hands will grow later. And if they have this seed with them, planted right, when they're young, they do it does blossom
It
later,
does
and it
matter.
does affect, yeah, it does affect how they think
Yeah.
about these things. Yeah.
Yeah, no, before I get to you, Deepa, just one I would like to, Vatsala, I want you to put on your publisher hat in that sense.
It's
and tell
always
us,
on.
yeah, yes, and tell us how the nature writing book genre is evolving at these days, and what do you look for when you're commissioning these books, or selecting these manuscripts? What is it that if some of the viewers watching this and they want to pitch a book to you, what is it that you'll be looking in them?
So in nature, I mean, nature is a buzzword right now. I can't say that nature related books are selling way more than other fiction or non-fiction. I don't think I would be able to say that, but definitely I think all publishers are looking for books that are themed on nature and its climate change. There are some very successful authors who have written in this genre, some very good authors who have written in this genre. What I would be looking at in fiction is, as I said, good storytelling, around a theme. Or secondly, don't put everything into the same book. Trees also, animals also, climate change also. Like sometimes it's like so much agenda that the story gets lost. So when it's fiction, the storytelling has to be very strong, and your message has to be um subtly messaged um through the story. And in terms of nonfiction, I would like very good research and a friendly way of explaining, because so that is the problem with most conceptual writing for children, is that the people, I mean, sometimes the people who are writing, if they don't have a complete and deep understanding of the subject, then they cannot communicate it well to kids. So that becomes quite a task sometimes, to be able to break it down and be able to tell the truth, to the reader. In terms of poems, I mean, just imagination and the talent to write poetry, because I'm like very finicky about poems, because like I don't care whether you rhyme or not, but it has to be a poem and not prose cut up into bits and pieces. So, and sometimes rhyming, just if you do not find the right word, then you just put another word. That times, like I keep telling people that many people send stories in verse, and i I mean, I'm quite ruthless about not taking those, because it doesn't work. Just write it straight. If everybody can't be a poet, and it is a craft. You can learn it, but it takes time to learn it, and poetry can be very hard to edit also. So then you're just like rewriting it, and then it disappoints the writer. So yeah, these three things mainly. And of course, welcome to write anything that kind of mixes up all these genres. That's great.
Wonderful. Deepa, your take, you have been writing for children. If for all my would be authors, and I'm hoping there'll be a lot of authors who'll, listen to this talk today and then, write fascinating books. What tips will you give them when you're writing for children?
Well, the first tip I always give is read, read, and read. Because this is something, that a lot of young people don't understand, that to become a writer, you need to read a lot. And to drive my point home, I sometimes quote Stephen King, such a popular writer who said that half of a writer's work is reading. The equal number of hours you spend writing should be spent reading. And this is something that because this is how I became a writer, because I used to read such a lot. And this is how you pick up language skills. Unconsciously you learn how to develop a story, plot, character, structure. All this you develop because you have read so much. And read in, of course, you will have your favorite genre, but read in all genres if possible. Now, the second thing is, kids often ask me, ma'am, where do you get your ideas from? The thing is, ideas are all around us. Somebody's chance remark, an incident that's happening, even while you're passing by, walking down the road, And a lot of my own stories have come from incidents in my own childhood. But it doesn't always happen, that something so dramatic will happen to you that you can make it into a very exciting story. So the thing is, you uh, look around you, be an alert observer of the world around you. And if you find an idea, of course, earlier we used to say keep an ideas notebook, but these days, you have your phone with you, and I do that sometimes. I just put down an idea that occurs to me in notes or just dictate into voice memos. Because what happens is sometimes you forget, you lose the idea because you get caught up in something else. Now, the other thing is, a writer has to be an observer because you're trying to replicate the real world in your stories. You're trying to draw the reader in by creating an alternate world. But that alternate world has to be very much like the actual world the reader is living in, so that the story, the characters, everything is credible for them. And I sometimes, when I'm taking my walk in the park, I watch people walking, and how people's gait is so distinctive. So when you're describing a character, how do you make a character stand out? It can be by the, or even the way they laugh. I noticed the other day this man, he has a very brassy kind of laugh, a full throated laugh, or somebody walks in a particular way, so, a very brisk and determined type of walk, which also defines the character. Somebody who walk, in a very brisk and purposeful way is probably a character like that. And of course, like what in Hindi we say takya kalam, phrases that people repeat. And because I remember Enid Blyton, there was that character used to say, "It's what I said," and it was just him so much. So if you can add these kind of little things in your writing, then your character will be, distinct from the other characters you have in the story. Then another thing, say that, okay, please remember that when you're writing a story, you need to set the scene first. You have to have the sense of place, and also the different why, how, who, what of a story. And remember that there is always a story begins with some kind of problem that has to be solved. And how is the main character and their helpers, their cronies, solve the problem? Will it be solved right away, like that? It's sort of the semi story that people say, "Ek tha Raja, ek thi Rani, dono mar gaye, khatam kahani." But well, what happened in between? Just remember that. How did they die? What happened? Who killed them? Did they die of illness, or were they assassinated? All these questions. Think about it. That a story has a structure, and you have to have, events happening, obstacles for the main person, to keep the pace going, to keep the reader engaged. And that this is, of course, for a children's story, not a literary type of story where things often don't happen and it's just a character's thoughts. Then another tip I really like to give, aspiring writers, is that please revise. I know there are people who say, "Oh, I'm a one-shot writer. I don't believe in revising. I believe that inspiration comes straight on, and I shouldn't meddle with it and all that." I am a very slow worker, and I revise a lot. I revise, and revise. So that is what I tell kids, that please, when you finished a story, read over it and see how you can improve it. And one more tip which I forgot to mention, journaling. Keep a diary, because you a writer should you know do riyaz in writing, like a musician or a sports person, practicing, honing their skills. So similarly, if you keep a diary, it is not only writing practice, it is also something you can go back to for ideas when you feel you would like to write a story, and something maybe have happened during the day. And always express your emotions. Just don't list down, okay, I got up, had my glass of milk, caught the school bus, and things like that. If anything has happened which has touched you in some way, maybe the teacher scolded you unfairly, or a bird grabbed your tiffin while you were sitting in the playground, or you know someone uh, grabbed your library book in the bus just to harass you. Well, these are the things that happen all the time, and they can be developed into stories later on. So these are all the tips I like to give. And one more thing I like to say, because there is a trend that almost every second child wants to publish a book, and in a sense, it's a bit alarming for me, because there are parents who are pushing their children to become published writers because of the boom in self-publishing, and also because kids feel it's a kind of peer pressure. Oh, okay, she published a book, why shouldn't I? And but are you really, do you have it in you? And writing definitely needs writing. It's not like, you won't have prodigies, like prodigies in music, or even in art, the children who are very naturally very gifted. There may be a rare example, but then writing is something that needs not only imagination but also experience and mastery of the form. And there's so much that goes into it, and it's a little distressing for me that schools also encouraging it, and parents are very happily, real glossy hardbound books, they're spending money, but I feel it's misleading a child. So you have to, the story, the writing has to come from within, as Vatsala very rightly said. It has to be organic. You have to feel, to connect with the reader. You have to feel the emotions that you're expressing. That you have to believe in what you are doing. And if you're want to write just because everyone else is publishing a book, then sorry, I mean, that's not the way to do it. So these are the tips that I'd like to. I mean, I don't want to discourage anyone, but definitely think about it. It's
Wonderful.
like dabbling in, ठीक है थोड़े दिन piano सीख लिया, या I knocked a tennis ball around and things like that. Don't take it like that.
Wonderful. I know we are running short of time, and the couple quick questions, Vatsala. What do you just like? Deepa touched upon the fact of a lot of writers coming in. There's this one question that will always be there. Can this be a profession, and how can people earn money or earn a living out of being an author? Is that
Through
possible?
only nature writing or through writing?
Nature writing primarily, and yeah, writing as well. Will there be a scenario?
Eh, as I said, like as Deepa said, I also don't want to discourage people from writing as such, but I saw a video today by another publisher who was explaining the equation of how it works in publishing. So unless you are a very 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 best selling author, it is difficult to make a living of books. Or if you have a very large list of books published, I mean, that Deepa may be better able to tell you, but I don't think you can live off writing easily. It, of course, like if you can reduce your needs to little, perhaps you could, but I don't know many children's authors who have been able to live off their books entirely, have some other source of income that gives them financial stability. Um, the only solution to that is to have children read more, and that is the commercial aspect. The commercial success aspect is the other side of the coin. If children read a lot, if they read a lot of books, if they read all kinds of books, and not just the ones recommended by school, if they're allowed to experiment with reading rather than just picking up the brands, or the popular books, or if they are allowed to make wrong choices, right choices, if they read prolifically, uh, if there are more library, I mean, it's a whole ecosystem of reading that needs to be created. And I suppose people are doing trying to do that all the time. People in publishing, other people who are readers, people who run book clubs, people who try to promote libraries. But I don't think that uh, there has been, to my satisfaction, there hasn't been enough of this whole phenomenon happening. Like 15, 20 years ago, when I came to publishing, I thought within this time, within my lifetime in publishing, I would see this whole critical mass that we always uh, desired, that we would reach this critical mass. Books would break out internationally from India, and we would have this like flowering of Indian children's publishing in English. But um, I mean, there are lovely books coming out. There are amazing authors. But that whole explosion that I so deeply wanted, and my colleagues and various publishing houses also uh, worked for, and want has not yet happened. So we just have to keep at it. We just have to keep doing, and what we've been doing, maybe do more within the framework and within the limitations that we have of pricing, of uh, of ideas, of we need to keep doing that. And well, fingers crossed, I hope that we will all see that celebration
Yes,
of.
we will see that explosion, as you're saying. Yeah, we'll
Yeah.
see that. Look, just quickly, there was one question I had. The book has a wonderful illustrated cover by Damini, right?
Oh yeah, she's amazing, isn't she?
But there aren't, and this is a gripe or a grouse. There aren't many illustrations within the book. Was it a conscious choice, or
uh,
there are the
Budget.
small things?
Yeah, it was mainly a limitation of budget. If I spend more on a book, I have to price it higher. And I already feel sometimes that, against competition, that our books are highly priced. Well, they're very beautifully produced also. So I'm okay with the higher price. But if had I put any more illustrations in, I would have uh, yeah, would have definitely exceeded my budget and my financial equation for the book. Because in the end, it is everyone has to understand that publishing is a business. That we do the books that we love, but it still has to work within a financial framework. So, well, next time I'll do maybe fewer pages and more illustrations, and that might work.
Yeah, that is true. And I have one question from one of podcasters working. My colleague Aditi, who's also podcasting a series called as From Rudyard to Ruskin. She had asked. This is a question for both of you. In this day and age when there's such disconnect, and also morbid things like climate change and all these things get so in your face. Uh, what challenges writers, and how do you make include all those nuances and yet retain the message of hope in that sense. That's what I'm kind of getting it from the question.
Um, uh, does she mean that people would not know those nuances? And that's why they would get lost? I didn't understand the question perfectly, I think.
Yeah. So she starts with, when the world is losing touch and
Okay.
growing up. Yeah. So
Yeah.
so
So,
that's
yeah, I would say being old really helps me because I have seen aspects of nature that maybe kids now may not be seeing or people now may not be seeing. So, and always it's always good. Like some of my pieces that I may not know much about, say, I may not know. I would always have somebody from an person who has been steeped in that particular aspect read it and see if there's something that I'm missing out. So I would not depend just entirely on my understanding of nature. Too, I would always try to give it for a peer review. Say a book is about elephants. I mean, surely I will give it to a Vivek Menon, to read, even if it's mythology or even if it is, or especially if it is about real life nature, because he's an elephant expert and who could know better than him. So I try to do that with nearly, I mean, many of my books where I am not familiar with. I mean, I'm be familiar with, but I do not consider myself an expert. And as an editor, you know a lot about a lot of things, but you don't know everything about one thing. So about many things. So I would think a peer review is a good way to, and early on, so that you'd be able to tell your writer to include those aspects in the writing of it. Yeah, sure, there would be nuances that would be lost, and but that's the nature of the world. There are that's why you go back and read older books to be able to understand. Okay, what. On the other hand, there's so many things people wrote about futuristically, and those are already come true. So things will move, things will change, but you have to understand or try to figure out how important is it for them to know this too. Like, do they need to know about this?
wonderful. And just final thing is, both to you and Deepa, possibly you can, as I touched upon, there's so much things that you've covered in your book, and I'm sure there's a whole lot of material that's there in your Excel sheet, as Vatsala was hinting at. So would we
Yeah.
be seeing a volume two and possibly a series come out, that because in some ways I think this book really works, is given the short attention span that people are, young readers are having. This book has the ability, you can go back to it again and again at different points and not feel lost, which you typically do with most of the books. So from that perspective, do you see volumes coming out of this compendium?
Shashwat, you have completely encouraged me to now think on those lines. So I will definitely discuss it, think about it, and see what we can do, and what more we can bring to this. But yeah, I feel terribly, not terribly, but fabulously encouraged by what you've said. So yeah, why not? And I'm
Yeah,
sure
and
Deepa will be ready to work on another one.
yeah, I really wanted to mention that once the book was complete, I thought, oh, we could have, there's so many writers, contemporary writers,
Yeah.
who are writing on nature, who are passionate about nature. And it just so happens at the time when you're compiling an anthology, all that doesn't come to mind. And actually, two or three people uh, actually messaged me and said, well, I wrote this book a long time. I was the first person to write about nature. Somebody even actually made that claim also.
Yeah,
So
yeah, we can. I think look at it. Let's see how whether we do it exactly this way or in a different, have
and
a different approach to it.
also
Whether we commission
there are
more pieces.
sorry, also there are people who are writing about aspects which have not been covered in this book.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
that,
there would be
the
many.
in our country, such a vast country, there is so much going on in the natural world. So I'm sure that there is scope, and as you rightly said, in an anthology, you can go back and pick up one piece which you like, and leave it and go back to the book. It's not like a novel that if you leave it halfway, then you will lose the thread and all that. So given the attention span issue, I think anthologies do work well for children and as well as older readers.
Yeah, wonderful. So that kind of brings me to the end of the conversation we have today. I'm hoping, as Vatsala said, we all are hoping there's an explosion in nature writing genre and nature books for that. I hope a lot of children read it, and I hope there are a lot more compendiums coming from your partnership, like the Book of Nature. You have this is volume one, and many more volumes with you. So thank you so much for your time, Vatsala, and thank you so much for
Thank
your
you,
time.
Shashwat. Thank you so much for your time as well and for
Thank
having
you
us.
for having us here.
Wonderful. And to all my viewers, I would just say, as I said, we have this community thing, and we are looking at a newsletter which comes out every month. And if you want to join our community, you can just drop in a mail at NWFC, that's Nature Writing for Children, at apu.edu.in. And
Sure,
we
we'll
hope
do
to
that.
see you. We hope to see you next time soon on our webinar series. Thank you so much, and have a great day.
Thanks. Bye. Okay.